Hello, happy new year. Welcome to season 2 of the podcast. I'm so excited and I've missed everybody. I hope you've missed my voice, but today, season 1 starts off with a special guest. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, it is Amy, and I am back, I guess, for my second episode.
Yes, I'm so excited. We have been waiting to do this episode for quite some time now, so I know a lot of people actually voted for this one on my poll.
Oh, that makes me so excited. I did vote for this one.
So she wanted it to happen too, so we decided to finally do it. But before we get into it, what is your highlight of the week? So keep in mind, this Christmas just happened for us, so...
Okay, so this is kind of a random highlight that actually has nothing to do with Christmas, but and probably has everything to do with what we were just talking about. But I just read a really good book. Yes. And so honestly, my highlight of the week is reading Every Summer After, because it took me out of my reading slump, and I just was like... I could not put that book down. 110% recommend. I had so much fun.
If you don't read and you want to get into it and you like romance and you like summer loving second chance romance vibes, I would definitely say to pick it up because it is an easy read. I feel like even if you didn't like reading, it could really get you into it. It's a gateway book.
It is a gateway book. It's like, I mean, I feel like so many people watch the Amazon show, The Summer I Turned Pretty.
Yes, which was also a book,
Which is also a book. And it's kind of just like that vibe, but like not teenagers.
A little more mature. So if you liked that series, I would highly recommend the book. I don't want to copy you and say my highlight of the week is reading because I don't know if the book I'm reading really fits into that category. We should do a book episode, by the way.
We definitely should do a book episode.
If you guys are interested in that and wouldn't be bored by that, let me know.
We have a lot of interesting reads. I promise it won't be boring.
I agree. Like, don't worry, they're not classics.
No.
But I would say my highlight of the week, I'll just say Christmas to be nice and wholesome. I had a good chill Christmas. Not too much going on, nice and relaxing. And also, our early morning spin class the day after Christmas, I went with Amy, so it was so fun.
Also revived my soul. That's been a highlight, is going to spin class.
I love reviving the soul. It's putting me in a good mood for the new year, and I feel like it's just manifesting good things.
Endorphins make you happy.
2023. I agree.
Yeah.
We were also 2 of the 3 people that attended the class.
Yeah. It was a quaint and intimate group.
Yeah, I agree. So those are our highlights of the week, and we'll jump right into the episode because I know you guys are freaking excited to hear us spill the tea. Okay, so let's jump right in. So without sugarcoating it, I thought you'd be the perfect guest to bring on because I'm so sorry. I'm not capitalizing on your trauma, but you've been in some interesting relationships, but there's one that in particular that tops them all. And since then, we've classified him as a narcissist. Mm-hmm. So I thought it would be great to bring someone on with actual experience and recent experience. So I can't wait to hear your thoughts. But before we get into that, we'll just kind of go through and list the traits of a narcissist, just so you get it all together, because I feel like a lot of people have an idea what it might mean, but it is a real personality disorder. So some of the sources have said these are people with a sense of exaggerated self-importance, an extreme need for admiration, lack of empathy, and difficulty forming healthy relationships, whether this be romantically or just their peers in general. And they always believe that they're superior to others and have high self-esteem. And they also have lots of jealousy, scorn, sense of entitlement, and need for praise. And everything basically just revolves around them. So to you, does that seem like it checks out?
So 100%, I would, sign off on all of those.
So I also did read that there was a Reddit thread, I think, of this girl who also dated a narcissist, and he was diagnosed. So he wasn't an undiagnosed narcissist. He was actually one, but she went into the relationship knowing he was a narcissist, which is like a different angle for sure.
Yeah.
But it's something she thought, it's like, oh, I can fix a broken man type of thing.
Yep.
So she went into it, and she also mentioned a lot of receiving the silent treatment. That was one of his ways of coping and dealing with problems in their relationship. And then also shifting blame. Like when something was his fault, she often said that he would shift blame on other things in his life. So it was never actually something he would be accountable for.
Interesting.
So I don't know if you can relate to that, but I'm sure there was a lot of gaslighting in that relationship.
100% relate to that. The interesting thing about that is I didn't actually know I was in a relationship with a narcissist until the relationship had ended, and until my therapist told me, Amy, you were dating a narcissist. That person is like, that's an emotionally abusive person. And I was like, wait, maybe that is true. And I just hadn't thought about it that way. So this is one of those moments where, like, you know, TikTok will tell you that here's all of these traits about your relationship and you, and sometimes just a good old-fashioned therapist is the good person to tell you.
That's funny, because that was actually one of my questions, because I know you only found out afterwards, but how long did it take you to realize that? Like, did you realize it before your therapist kind of showed you why he was? Or, like, did you see it with any, like, red flags that came up? Or was it just very turn a blind eye to it because you were in a relationship with him at the moment?
So it's kind of interesting because I feel like I experienced this relationship in 3 separate parts. And I think so I've been a couple of years out from it, and I feel like I went to therapy, did some healing, and like was in other relationships that taught me good coping skills and good like communication skills in a relationship. So I feel like I can talk about it without it being like the only experience I've had. So I think like the relationship happened in 3 separate parts, and I think that kind of like depicts the unraveling of his personality. So the first year was very like everything was kind of aloof and kind of like there wasn't really any glaring
clear-cut signs.
No glaring red flags, except for he didn't want to integrate with my friends. He wanted me to be part of his friend group.
So basically you immersing yourself in his life, but not vice versa.
And pulling me out of like my comfort zone and putting me into a space where he was comfortable. So he never wanted to be in a space where he was uncomfortable. But I was like, oh, but he's just like, you know, shy. That's totally okay. Because there's like a reason. You can sort of gaslight yourself into thinking that there's a reason for everything.
Yeah.
And then the second year was kind of when things started to unravel a little bit. But nothing where I was like, oh, well, seriously, this would end our relationship. Even though I probably should have.
You know, you can't blame yourself for that, because in the moment, it really just, you know, you need to learn from your mistakes, you know?
We really do.
So it's a lesson in disguise.
It really was. And I think that the main reason why I think that is because I hadn't spoken to anybody about like the kind of complicated parts of our relationship. I was never like, oh yeah, you know, he gaslights me every time we have an argument, or if we are fighting about something, I always end up apologizing, or he's mad at me for this thing that I didn't actually do, or he's mad at me for working too much or something like that. Or like doesn't like my friends, like those kind of pieces. I never thought of those things as bad things because I never talked about it with other people.
Because I feel like a lot of the time there are 2 types of people. There are the people who will literally share and air out their dirty laundry with their friends and just get an opinion because that's the way they process things. But then there's friends who keep their relationship very private, and you never really know what's going on until it's happening, like the breakup basically, or like the giant fight. Like, for example, I'm not one to really speak negatively of my relationship because it's great.
Yeah.
So no shade to John. Love you. But if we did ever have an argument, it's not something that I would immediately like bring up with my friends, because I just don't want to paint him in a bad light in case something does happen. And I feel like in this case, it's hard too, because you want your friends to like the person. So you bringing up these problems obviously deters them from making any kind of good relationship with them. So I never blame people for not saying that, because you're afraid, right? You want your friends to like who you're dating.
Exactly.
And you don't want them to be like, Amy, like, why are you being an idiot, right? You always have that in the back of your mind too.
And so I think that was kind of like part 2, was sort of trying to understand myself, that like maybe some of these behaviors were really challenging. And then part 3 was like really the unraveling. So it was for us, and I think it was like really when I actually started to understand that he had a narcissistic personality, was when we were taken out of his comfort zone and put into a different situation where he didn't have the like social security of the people around him.
Like, it wasn't comfortable for him.
No, it was no longer comfortable for him. And he had to kind of like adapt to that. And that was when it like it started to become really clear.
Right. And you're just like, okay, maybe all those TikToks, all those signs are actually pointing to this.
Exactly.
So I feel like if you're in a relationship like that right now, I would definitely, I mean, don't diagnose him. That might set him off.
Yep.
But definitely reconsider some things. And if he is not wanting, or he or she's not wanting to communicate these issues, that's also another clear sign. But I also wanted to know if there was like any moments where you didn't piece it together yet, but you had like moments of fear almost with him.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's kind
like
of
a fear of disappointing him kind of thing.
There's a few. The first one was when I wanted to move away to grad school, but I was really like, I mean, applying to school is just like a stressful thing in general.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like if I don't get in, I still want to move. And he was like, well, we're not going to move if you don't get in because there's no reason. And I remember that so vividly, because I was afraid that like I wouldn't be able to get what I wanted and what I needed if I disappointed him in any way. And so it was almost like I had to win in order to win at the relationship.
Right. And there should never be any kind of scorecard in a relationship.
No,
ever.
100%. And so I think that was kind of when it started to piece together that like, oh, this isn't like maybe the best thing. And then especially towards like the end, I feel like it became more clear that it was always a scorecard.
Right.
Yeah. Also, I think that like fear piece is kind of interesting, because the winter before we broke up, which was right before COVID, I have a distinct memory of sitting in the car with you, and I was like, I don't know if I'm happy or not. I'm not sure if I want to be in this relationship. And this was the first time I had said out loud that like,
it's daunting.
It is. When you're in like a 2.5-year relationship, you're like, well, I obviously have to like be with this person.
Right, because you consider like, this is where there's so many problems, because so many people will be in long-term relationships and are just get comfortable and kind of not make peace with the flaws, because these ones are obviously ones you don't ever have to feel like you have to stay in. But obviously there's all that time you wasted, and everyone's like, I already know them. I know, like, they're evil. Like, you know, it's better fighting a demon you know than one you don't.
Yep.
So, obviously saying that out loud is so scary, because you're just like, what happens next? Like, what do I do? And, like, that instills fear in itself.
And the scary thing about a narcissist is they will convince you that you don't belong with anyone else. Like, you are the best thing, that they are the best thing that's ever happened to you. So, your fear is then, like, multiplied, because you're afraid to leave the relationship, because what if everything that they are telling you is true?
So here's another thing about narcissists. It's like, I feel like I've known some, but not in a relationship, obviously, but I feel like I've come across some undiagnosed narcissists, but I feel like they can also be so like charismatic and charming when they need to be, like when it suits their needs, and I don't know, like they want that admiration, like basically like fishing for compliments, but it's all superficial, and like they appear to be like extremely confident, but I don't know, like I feel like this changes so quickly. Like they flip a switch like when they feel like dismissed, or it's not, I don't know, they're not in the spotlight.
And that was exactly the way that it was. When I first met this person, I was like, he's the coolest person I've ever met. Oh my goodness. I felt like I was the one who had to like like reach in the relationship. And then as like things started to unfold and we started to get to know each other and like then we lived together, I was like, wait, all of this is a front. And like, you know what? Fake it till you make it, but don't fake it if it's going to hurt the people around you.
Right.
Like if you have to derive your confidence from putting others down, then maybe
you need a little bit of help.
Yeah, maybe it shouldn't be there.
I don't know if you've seen How I Met Your Mother.
Yes.
But basically, I feel like all narcissists, it's like, you know, in the show when they explain that in a relationship, there's always a settler and then a reacher.
Yeah.
I feel like they always feel like they're the settler, which is what brings you back to when you said that they make it seem like you're the best, or they're the best thing that's ever happened to you.
It is literally so funny that you mentioned this, because this was a conversation that I had with this person. So it was like year 1 of us dating, and all of our friends were together, and we were rewatching How I Met Your Mother. And we were like, there was other couples in the room. We hadn't been dating for that long.
Right.
And he was like, everyone was like, oh, like, who do you think is the reacher and who do you think is the settler in your relationship?
And usually a healthy relationship would be like all fighting for reacher.
We're both reaching.
Right.
Immediately, he talks first. So, like, it's not even like I said something. He was like, I think I'm settling because I think I'm more conventionally attractive than you.
Okay, so that was locked and loaded.
Yeah, that was ready to fire. And I was like, oh, yeah, totally. That makes sense.
And you're just like, God, why did I fucking say that?
Yeah, I was like, oh, of course I'm going to agree with this. But, like, I couldn't. Looking back on it now, I'm like, wow, there's no one. If you think that you're settling in your relationship, I think you're in the wrong relationship.
I absolutely agree, because there's nothing cuter than like two people thinking the world of their significant other, right? And usually it should be a mutual feeling.
Yeah.
Like, I remember talking about this with John, and I'm like, no, I'm the reacher, and he's like, no, I'm the reacher. And I feel like that's just like what normal people do. And obviously, like, it's all in good fun. Like, I'm sure in most relationships you guys are equals.
Yes.
But however, I don't know, if you come out saying you're settling, maybe you're in the wrong relationship. Just because I know you said that, but I feel like there's so many times where people, I don't know, will just think they're better than someone else. And I'm like, then why are you with them? Like, is it because you have some weird, like, dominatrix thing going on?
Are
like, you like, always have to be dominant to somebody else? Are you afraid
that, like, that if, like, you're with them, that they're not gonna leave you?
But I also feel like maybe it's because they always want to have that upper edge. Like, they want to have the upper hand to be like, I'm the better one, so you should be glad. Because if they were in the other position, I feel like they couldn't use that.
Yeah, you should be, like, happy that you're with me.
Right. So I feel like they're too intimidated to be in a relationship with someone that could challenge them potentially. Which 100%. Is so sad, because that's basically the sickness. Mm-hmm. But I also had another question towards that. Because obviously in relationships you argue, and sometimes someone just needs to hear constructive criticism. And usually narcissists would be extremely sensitive to any sort of criticism, even if it, like, comes in a positive tone. So did you ever have that in, like, any heated arguments? Like, did you feel like the detachment when, like, he was in that mode? Or, like, did he respond with, like, only judgment or more gaslighting? Like, how is that like?
So our, like, last year of our relationship was basically all fighting. And, like, just very, like, turbulent fighting. A lot of yelling, a lot of screaming. And it was like talking to a different person. Like, it was like his personality kind of detached from, like, what I knew, and it became, like, the fighting version of him.
That's absolutely terrifying.
It was like his voice sounded different, the way that he spoke sounded different, everything about it was just, like, a different person.
Are we sure he also wasn't a sociopath?
Honestly, jury's still out on that one.
Okay, well, that's TBD, guys, but I'm thinking, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but all the puzzle pieces fit.
Yeah, I mean, if the shoe fits.
Yeah.
And so it was like having a fight with a different person. None of the fights ever ended where I was like, yeah, that was a positive ending. I was usually like, I ended up apologizing for something that I was upset about, and we would fight over stupid things.
Like it wasn't even, like, it shouldn't have been a big deal.
No. We would fight over things like, we had a massive fight over a laundry basket. We also had big fights over big things, like where I went to the bar with my friends and he thought that I was, like asking for other men to talk to me, kind of thing. Where like, you've known me forever. Like, I don't know. That's not like my vibe.
That's not something you like want to go out and do in a relationship, especially, but like, literally, it's just like not your personality.
I was going out with my girlfriends and he was like, well, what actually happened was, a dude that I had met through some other friends who didn't know I had a boyfriend had like sent me a message on Instagram. He was like, he only did that because you were asking for it. So it exploded into this big fight.
So everything was your fault.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas I was like, oh, I should tell him that somebody messaged me because we're in a partnership and I should do that. Not thinking that like it was going to explode into this is your fault. So even if I was doing the right thing by saying like, hey, this thing happened, I want to tell you about it.
So the thing with that though is like, did he actually ever fully trust you then?
Never.
Like, so that's what I mean. Like, how would you even build a steady relationship when someone can't even have genuine trust for you? Mm-hmm. Like, that's quite literally impossible. Was he also possessive?
Extremely.
So what I don't understand is that they are so criticizing of the other person, yet they want to keep you. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know, it's very, I mean, I can't relate to it obviously, and like, if this is someone you know and they are willing to change, then maybe that's a good thing. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they're the step in the right direction, but like, I just never understood that parallel where they love you so much that they can't let go of you, but also they despise you at the same time.
It was, it's such like a strange kind of paradigm where you're wondering like, okay, why is this person, I always said like, whenever people ask me about this relationship or like, because I usually just be like, oh, I was with this person who we were, whenever I've described this relationship to like new relationships, I say we were two people who just really shouldn't have been together. We were not well suited. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like an easy way to put it.
Right.
But I think a lot of it is like, we just were so fundamentally different in the way that we fought and not in a way that was like productive on either end. And his like unwillingness to change and unwillingness to see things as a problem just continuously perpetuates. I think it also is like very detrimental to people who've like been in relationships with narcissists, who they're like, wait, am I the problem? Because you're always apologizing for being the problem.
Right. Well, and I think that's another thing. Like, I think while they are self-absorbed, it's very difficult for them to also like really like truly love themselves, which is why I think their partners are often not seen as like a separate person kind of thing, and they can't they're so focused on themselves they can't focus on how they can benefit you in the relationship, because a relationship is a two-way street, guys. And I don't know, I feel like they look for a partner that can like be their punching bag basically, and like fill those needs, or like I guess fail to fill those needs as well. It's just kind of a vicious cycle, because obviously these people are struggling too, so I don't want to be like too hard on them. But then also a part of this is also like their personality, right? Like there's some part of him, even if he didn't have this personality disorder, he's still a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
So there's that too. But also, I'm also so curious, what do you think his love language was then?
It's so interesting because wow, you really nailed it with the questions. He actually despised talking about love languages, because he said that it was just a way that people could like use like an organizational system to basically make it seem like the things that their partner wasn't doing for them were okay.
Okay.
Which doesn't really make sense, because everyone's going to have a different love language.
Well, yeah.
So my love language, I think, changed after that relationship. So I think during it, I feel like his love language would be words of affirmation.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And quality time.
Interesting.
But I think more so, but I would say like quality time was probably what he said his love language was.
The front.
I think it was more so words of affirmation, and it was affirming what he wanted to know about himself.
And it's always stuff where it's not even the truth. He just wants what he wants to hear, which I guess is words of affirmation in a way.
Yeah.
But I feel like just hearing how good they are or how superior they are has to fill some kind of void in there.
Yeah.
So that's actually interesting. But did he ever, like, in that relationship, what was your love language? And did he actually, like, fulfill those actions?
My love language definitely used to be mostly quality time. And I think it's less quality time now because I didn't experience a lot of quality time.
Right, what you thought was quality time definitely wasn't.
No, like it would be like, okay, well, we're spending time together, but there's no quality to this time.
Was he, okay, so you guys lived with each other when you moved for grad school.
Yeah.
Was he prioritizing time, like, on dates, like, to make sure that you guys were developing or growing in your relationship, or was this spending time at home quality time in his eyes?
Spending time at home was quality time in his eyes.
Okay, that's a big problem.
Exactly. So, like, I love quality time if it means, like, going on dates and doing things.
Right.
And my idea of quality time in this relationship was, like, oh, let's go to a cafe and get a coffee and then go stare at the ocean. Or let's go for...
I love that. Okay, she's been reading books.
Yeah, she has been reading books. Or let's go for a walk. But those things were like pulling teeth to do because he didn't want to do them.
Well, and it's also like, I don't want to use this phrase because I also think it's problematic in its own way, but it's also like, if he wanted to, he would. And it's like, you don't want to have to ask somebody for these things, which... in itself, like, I would get into that in a later episode, but there's so many things wrong with if he wanted to, he would. But in this situation, for lack of better, like, words, that's exactly what this is. And, like, to force your partner to do fun stuff with you is just so heartbreaking.
And it's hard when you're like, I just want to... I remember, like, literally screaming into the void and being like, I literally just want us to, like, go for a walk together.
And you just simply can't even give me that.
No, and it would be like, I would end up doing them in, like, spite. Like, I would, like, go on these, like, resentful stomps because I'd be like, why doesn't he want to do anything with me? And it became, like, a double-edged sword for us, too, because I would spend a lot of time with my friends. And he was like, well, you're never home. You're never spending time with me. And I was like...
you don't want to.
It was literally like, well, you don't want to spend time with me. And then we just, like, it would, like, emerge into these larger fights. Oh, God. So it was like, I couldn't do things with him, but I also couldn't do things without him.
Interesting. So it's kind of like he would pull you down if he was falling off a hill type of thing. Gotcha. I can't be lonely by myself kind of thing. That's interesting. What is his sign? This is the most Gen Z thing I've asked all
He's
day.
He's a Leo.
Oh.
I will never date another Leo.
Sorry, Nima. One of our best friends, Nima, is a Leo, but in the best way
Shout
possible.
out to you, Nima. You are an August Leo. He's a July Leo.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
But yeah, I won't ever date another Leo. Also, one of my really good friends, Hannah, is a Leo, but she is also an August Leo. So maybe I just don't like July
Leos. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean,
Justice for July Cancers, but like July Leos can suck it.
July Cancers are like my best friends.
Thank you.
I literally have like 4 of my really good friends are all July Leos. I mean, July Cancers, not Leos. So shout out to you guys. But if you didn't know and you're not into astrology, because I know it can be annoying, but Leos are known for wanting all the attention on them, basically. And that's just like one of the stereotypes. But it doesn't surprise me that he's one of those.
It is just kind of funny that I was like, wow, this, like, you know, if the shoe fits.
It's like the whole checklist, like every possible box he checks.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Did he also not... I don't know. I feel like a lot of guys who are like this also don't like to learn about things like this. Like, they don't like to learn stuff about themselves, like personality tests, like the love language thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just so close-minded to all those things. Because do you think it's because they're afraid to learn or like acknowledge that they are actually what it is?
I think that it's a fear of growth. And so after that year, I did like a lot of like learning, self-learning,
right,
unlearning. And like he definitely bashed like personality tests, love languages, that kind of stuff all the time. And do I think that you should base your entire relationship off of them? No, but I think that everything can be used as a tool. Like you can learn about like, okay, so like my partner likes certain things or like,
and I think it's just like healthier to acknowledge that. And like, if you don't even like, it's fair if you don't believe in it, but if you don't want to make that effort in the relationship, it just like shows how much you don't care to grow what you have.
Exactly. And it's like I try to look at it even more so from like an attachment styles perspective.
Right.
Because like a lot of attachment styles are like very much based in psychology. And so like a little bit more like credible.
Agreed.
And like while there's like, so we know secure, anxious, and avoidant, but there's like different sects of attachment styles also.
Right.
So I learned that I am an avoidant. I think I always have been. And I think that like, and he was 100% had an anxious attachment style.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
But it's so interesting because he had a very avoidant personality, wouldn't talk about things, wouldn't want to like unpack things together, didn't want to work on stuff, but wasn't anxiously attached.
Right.
Because he also didn't want to like lose out on, like he had to have kind of like his claws in, so to speak. So I feel like sometimes like learning about your own attachment style is a good way to like unpack that a little bit further. I highly recommend the book Attached.
I have heard good things, and I'm surprised I haven't read it yet because I'd love to know mine. I feel like I can make a good guess, but maybe I'll let it tell me what I am. But that's on narcissistic relationship patterns, so watch out for those.
Yeah.
The next thing I want to talk about, though, if you're comfortable with it, we'll take a little short break, and I can ask you for permission first.
Sounds good.
We'll segue this into the next portion of the episode. Just to make sure, guys, I'm not exploiting my friend. Okay, friends, I've gotten the stamp of approval, and we are going to talk about something that truly shocked me when I first found out about it, because I just couldn't fathom a person who is capable of being so cruel to somebody. And it really hurt me because Amy's one of my best friends. So I was genuinely like, the fact that somebody like did this to you, or the fact that someone like this just exists in the world, good luck to him in the future, because you can't get that far with that behavior. Anyways, before we get into that, I had one more question, like towards the end of the relationship. Was there any time where you found that he was in revenge mode and like potentially like including other people in the mess and telling people like lies about you or exaggerations and try to like turn them against you, basically, and like basically putting your name in the dirt kind of thing?
So, towards the end of our relationship, okay, so basically like the end of the end took about 5 months.
Holy shit.
Because it was COVID. So I had planned on ending this relationship. I was sitting at dinner with my girlfriends, and I was like, guys, I think this is it. Like, I'm unhappy. I think I'm going to end this relationship. And that was Friday, March 13th, 2020.
Holy shit. She knows the exact, that's literally when COVID started.
Literally. I remember it because it was Friday the 13th. And I like distinctly remember sitting in this restaurant and there being like hand sanitizer everywhere, and we were like freaking out that the border was going to close.
Right.
And then literally by that Sunday, the world had shut down.
Oh my God. And you're just like, must rethink things.
Literally. So like where I was living was like extremely locked down. So I couldn't leave and he couldn't leave.
Fuck.
So I basically just like went into survival mode.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I sort of like shut myself out from him and shut myself out from the relationship. And in that, I think he started to feel very, and like, you know what, in in light of like learning things about ourselves, this wasn't a good way to do it because it's like very painful for the other person to not understand why you're closed off.
Right.
I get that. But also, he put me through like 2.5 years of garbage. So you
also can't blame me either.
Yeah, I'm like, well, it's not 100% my fault. So at that point, I just kind of like shut everything out. And he had made a comment. We had talked about like what would happen if we had broken up, kind of like loosely as a joke, but I wasn't joking. I was like pulling for information.
Right.
I basically spent the next 4 months planning my exit.
So you were pulling at a loose thread.
Yeah.
And hoping it would all just come apart.
Yeah. I was talking to my friends about it. I was like, we had a full-fledged plan of how I was going to get out of this relationship because we lived together. Like there was so many like moving parts. And he was like, well, if we break up, like, you know, all of these people are going to be my friends. Like they're not going to continue to be friends with you. And I was like,
what a fun human
like,
being.
I definitely know that if we broke up, you would talk a lot of shit about me. And it like, now it makes a lot more sense because of the way that he used to speak about his ex-girlfriend before me.
And you're just like, oh, it's the pieces are coming together.
If every girl that you've dated before me is crazy, then maybe it's not them. Maybe it's
a you
making them crazy. So I think like I was a little bit concerned that he was going to like say a lot of horrible things about me. And when you've been in a relationship with someone for a while, they know a lot of things about you.
Right, and you're just like, are you going to use that against me? Because that was a for your ears only type of thing.
Exactly. They know how to paint you in a way that would actually be damaging.
Right.
So that was something that like hung in my mind for quite a while, that I knew he was capable of saying things about me that like would be very, very damaging to like me as a person, my reputation with other friends. Like plot twist, honestly, it didn't really like affect my relationships that much.
I was gonna say.
I think it ended up being fine.
I mean, when you really know somebody, you just know that they're not what someone else is saying about them,
and
you know?
I think I learned that like the people in my life knew that I'm not a malicious person.
And all your friends are adult enough to also form their own opinion about you anyways. So.
Exactly. We are not like attached to the people that we're in a relationship to. We are our own entities.
Exactly. I love that. Well, so when you came to the end of your 5-month struggle,
yeah,
and it was all over, it was obviously a big weight lifted off your shoulders.
Huge.
So the thing that I was alluding to earlier, so this guy has the audacity to, he mailed it, right?
He read it to me over the phone.
Oh, okay. So he wrote a letter to Amy, basically saying like everything that went wrong in the relationship and mainly what was wrong with Amy, which like is in itself so fucked up, but you continue how that played out.
So basically, the relationship ended over a weekend. This was actually not the day that I had planned on it ending. It just kind of happened. Right. It was 3 weeks earlier than the due date.
Thank God.
Yeah.
It was premature.
Yeah. The Virgo rising in me was really, really chomping at the bit.
You're just like, it's not following schedule.
So, the relationship ended and about 5 days later he left. And in those 5 days, it was actually like everything was fine. It was almost like removing the pressure of the relationship took away everything that was like painful about it. Also, his ego was hurting. Mm-hmm. So there was no reason for him to be malicious because he was then living in my house. So at this point, he had left and I was feeling sad. I was feeling just like horrible. Mm-hmm. And I also like was feeling a lot of like bad things about how I had treated him in the end of the relationship. Right. Kind of feeling as though it was my fault.
Like a tad guilty.
I was feeling a little bit guilty. Some of these were like the way that he had presented it to me. Also, some of it I think was just like the overwhelming end of a 3-year long relationship.
Right.
So he left and I wrote him a letter that I gave to him, and it was basically...
So you wrote him first?
I wrote him first.
Okay.
And it was basically like, I'm sorry that I treated you the way that I did. I wish that I had not drawn it out for so long. And I wish that I really hope the best for you in the future.
That's sweet. I mean, Did he deserve that? No.
No.
He didn't deserve any explanation from you, but since you're a good person.
And I think at that point I felt as though I owed it to him because of like how drawn out the end of the relationship was.
It's closure for you too.
Yeah,
so
it definitely was closure for me, because also the thing about like ending a relationship is you are seeing all of the good things in that person. You're not remembering any of the bad stuff. And if I could like talk to like Amy at that point, I would not have written him that letter. Because I was remembering all the few times that I felt happy and I felt loved. But a lot of those were like, you're feeling happy and loved with like an exception.
Right.
So not long after that, actually on my birthday, we shared a lot of friends, and at this point, like our breakup wasn't messy. So we kind of thought like, no, we can maintain this friendship. Mm-hmm. This was before I went to therapy. I would like that to be clear also. That
another sign for all of you, if you're thinking about it, do it.
Yeah. I had not seen a medical professional who was like, Amy, you were dating a freaking narcissist.
Yeah.
He had asked if he could call me for my birthday, and I was like, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Seems like a nice spirited thing.
Yeah. He called me and he read me this letter, and it was an itemized list of everything that I had done wrong in the relationship.
On her birthday.
On my birthday. From, like, how I made his anxiety worse, how I treated him in social situations, how I was a bad person for the way that I allowed my own insecurities to breed into the relationship. And it was, like, a long list. And
I'm sorry, but like just to cut in for a second, as someone who does struggle with anxiety, it's never okay to take like all those symptoms out on other people. Like that's not fair to them, it's not fair to you, and it's not productive. So just for him to say that you made it worse, well, maybe he should have done something about that himself so he would avoid feeling that way.
The man didn't go to therapy also.
That's what I mean. So you know what? Like there could have been problem solved here, people.
Literally. So there was like definitely pieces that were a lot of projection. So that conversation ended, and I did not talk to him for several weeks. And in these several weeks, I was like, fuck this man. I no more. Actually, that's it. My really good friend Paige said, Amy, he read you a manifesto of everything that he didn't like about you. And I was like, that's a great way to put it.
It's definitely a new level of fucked.
Yeah.
And honestly, props to him. That's the most unique exit I've ever seen.
But it gets better.
Oh, God.
So 2.5 weeks later, he calls me. And honestly, I'm living my life at this point. I'm having a good time. I started dating. I was just like, it was hot girl summer.
Love.
And he was like, why haven't you talked to me in the last couple of weeks? Like, what's going on? I feel like
why do you think, sir?
I was like, he's like, why are you icing me out? And I was like, honestly, your list really hurt me. And I just don't appreciate it. I don't feel like that was an accurate depiction of like how things happened. And that was when he became unglued. Oh. And he said, and this was like, I think this was probably the moment my therapist knew he was a narcissist, was when he told me, you will never find anyone as good as me. I'm the best thing that has ever happened to you. Like that I am a terrible person, that like I was holding the phone away from my ear. I was sitting outside next to a lake, going for a little walk with some ducks, and like holding the phone away from my ear because he was screaming into the phone of all of these things, that like why I'm such a bad person and why I will never find love, because he was the best thing that has ever happened to me.
Spoiler alert, Amy is in a healthy relationship with the nicest man ever. So one, he's wrong. Two, like just for you to have the balls to say that to somebody is insanity. Even if you were a terrible person, like just the way he put that is beyond me.
And it was like the you'll never find anyone as good as me. Like,
I'm sure there's plenty.
Like, first of all, like, how dare you have the audacity to, like, think so highly of yourself,
right?
And of another person.
And this is where, like, I can't emphasize it enough. Like, therapy is so important because obviously, like, these words could really get to someone who's not, like, as secure with themselves or, like, believes what they say.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I mean, I haven't experienced it firsthand, but, like, if that happens to you, like, you need to, that's self-care tip number 1.
Yeah.
Like, for sure, you have to think about yourself first, and, like, that this person is not mentally stable, or their words are just, like, basically words to feed their ego. So I think that's definitely something that you need if you happen to be in a narcissistic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any, like, I mean, to wrap that up, do you have any tips for people who might think they're in a narcissistic relationship, or, like, anything to tell them after someone recovering from one?
Number 1, go to therapy.
Absolutely.
It will 100% help you. If, like, I think the year after that relationship was really hard, because I think the big jump for me was leaving it and ending it and feeling this, like, amazing weight lifted off my shoulders, but then also realizing that, like, I was an incredibly broken person. Right. I was very cracked. I was just, like, a shell of a human being trying to, like, scratch my way through life. And the first, like, 2 months after the relationship ended, I feel like I was on a high. And then all of a sudden it was like I crashed, and I was like, wait, I'm feeling kind of sad and kind of lonely, and I'm not really sure, like, where to move through from here. And so I went through a lot of, like, short-term relationships. I dated a lot of different people, and I really had to learn, like, how I showed up in relationships and, like, what I needed to do to change. Because ultimately, like, was this relationship my fault? Well, it takes 2 to tango. But I had to unlearn a lot of the behavior.
Definitely.
And so I think, like, taking the time and taking the self-care to learn what bad habits you've picked up from people.
That's hard too, right? Because it's been ingrained in your head for so long that it's definitely hard to unlearn. And, like, I think too, with people who might be in a relationship, like, you just have to, like, manage your expectations, because a lot of the time it's kind of realistic for them to change. Yeah. Like, that's probably just going to be, like, the root of who they are for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And, like, very highly motivated narcissists too, like, I've heard, like, will make, like, the occasional small change, but they'll go back into their old patterns too. So if you've picked up some of their traits or habits, it's so difficult. And, like, honestly, it's, like, a part of your trauma for sure. It's so hard to just be like, no, I'm okay. Like, I don't need 100%. That. This is what normalcy looks like.
And I definitely picked up some traits that I, like, didn't love. And one of them was feeling like the silent treatment was the best way to
handle any argument.
Yeah, because I would just, like, become super, super closed off and not want to deal with anything.
And guys, just a word of advice, like, walking away from an argument is not going to fix anything. Like, no. Yes, you may need a moment of time to think about, like, what's going on, and you can't deal with it hands-on, like, right in that moment, but walking away and coming back and pretending like nothing happened, that's not productive whatsoever. Like, no one's gonna change. You're gonna be upset about the same thing again. Yep. And I don't know, I feel like people who practice only using the silent treatment have more fundamental issues that they need to address, but anyways, that's besides the point.
I think that it's like it seems like the best answer to be like, well, we're not fighting, but it's honestly making things worse.
It's like, I'm not talking to him right now.
Which is so problematic. And I definitely started picking up on traits like that. It's, like, been 2.5 years since I ended that relationship, and I still feel myself, like, having to remind subconscious me of some of the traits that I have picked up. Right. So, like, for example, assuming that my partner is always going to be mad at me over something, and I'm going to have to immediately go in with apologies. I, like, am a chronic apologizer in my current relationship.
I am still like that.
Yeah.
I don't know where I've learned that from, but I think it's just because we are like very empathetic people. And I feel like a lot of people like that are drawn to people who are often too kind.
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, it's easy. I hate to say this about ourselves, but it's easy to manipulate kind people.
And
really
there
is such thing about being too nice, which is sad because that's all I want in this fucking society. But yeah, they're just drawn to people who are like forgiving, right? And people who are willing to say sorry to them. And I don't know, it's just so sad that we feel like the need to do that, because I'm sure in your relationship now, they're like, why are you sorry? Like, literally every time I say sorry for something so tiny and stupid, John's like, why are you saying sorry?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know.
I consistently apologize for like my lack of perfection. So one of those things is like, if I'm feeling unwell, I'll apologize for being unwell. And my boyfriend will be like, but why are you apologizing? You can't control how your body is feeling.
Right.
And I'm like, but if I could, then I would. So I'm sorry that I can't control it. But there's like, you're so used to it
like,
being your fault.
Right. And like being just like a people pleaser, not even just in relationships, but like in
life.
general, it's very difficult to be okay with not impressing people, but not being, like you said, perfect. And it's so sad because like a lot of the stuff we say sorry for is normal. Like a lot of people will not like blink an eye at the stuff we say sorry about, but God, it's just like, it frustrates me that that's something that has been so deeply like ingrained in our lives. And I don't know if like we were taught that by any like authority figures growing up either.
I don't know. I kind of wonder, like, I feel like I picked up on it younger too, where I like always felt
We were very goody two shoes, rule following.
Oh, we were terrified of authority.
Like, I was terrified of getting in trouble, and like that sticks with you for
I
a
thought
really
that going
long
to the
time.
principal's office was gonna like ruin my life.
Oh, me too. I think also, I'm not blaming this on my mom, but I think she was kind of like that too.
Yeah.
Like, she never got in trouble. She was always stickler for the rules. Everyone liked her, so I was like, I have to be like that too, obviously. Yeah. So anyways, besides that, don't say sorry for unnecessary things. It's also maybe the Canadian us.
Maybe a little bit of the Canadian in us.
Yeah, that could be it.
100%, like, if you feel like there's something wrong in your relationship, use your voice.
Yeah.
Also, if you feel like your relationship is something that you want to work on, like maybe, you know, a lot of these things resonate with you, but you're like, but I love my partner and I want to make this work. Maybe go to therapy together, because it's like once you start unpacking those conversations and someone's able to like see the way that you communicate with each other, they'll be able to hopefully guide you in the right direction and maybe give them some coping strategies.
Exactly. So, I mean, to wrap it all up, if you're ever doubting your reality while you're in a relationship, if you feel like your self-esteem has been injured, if there's no room for you to be a little selfish, maybe take a moment, step back, do some research on narcissistic behaviors, maybe talk to somebody, and I hope you find your peace with that, and I hope you realize that, because everyone deserves to be happy. Same with these people. I hope they find their happiness somehow. But yeah, any last words? Thank you for sharing all of this, by the way.
Thank you for having me. Hey, go to therapy, friends. If you
That's the moral of the story.
If you think you're dating a narcissist, or you think you might be a narcissist and you like don't want to continue these patterns.
Absolutely.
If it is accessible to you, you know, read some books, go to therapy, practice self-care, and be kind to people.
I totally agree. Watch The Tinder Swindler. I think he was a narcissist.
Oh, 100%. If you're not a reader, watch The Tinder Swindler.
That's my other piece of advice. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It was very fun to talk through it. Obviously a little traumatizing for Amy, but you know, she's a trooper. And I hope to record more episodes with her soon. So if you liked this one, we have a couple more up our sleeves, I think. So yeah, look out for those, and I will talk to you next week. Bye!
Bye!